Yo, what's up guys? Joey Adrian here. Today we're going to be talking about how to land your first flips. Now the goal of today is not to teach you a perfect front flip. It's not to teach you the perfect techniques and every single step that you need to take. What my goal is to show you that you can work on these on your own without mats, without a spotter, completely free of fear if you get down these bail techniques first. So my philosophy when it comes to learning flips, and especially when they're scary flips, is not to teach the perfect technique from step one all the way until landing the flip perfectly. That's not how I like to teach, that's not how I like to learn. For me, I like to get rid of the fear, because the fear 90% of the time is what's holding people back from even starting because they're scared to start. So the goal of today is to actually teach you some techniques that you can use, go right out into your front yard, into your backyard, find some grass. You can use them anywhere, whenever. You can go outside right now and start working on these movements to be comfortable with falling. Once you're comfortable with falling using these techniques, you'll be more than comfortable adding extra power, making it all the way to your feet and actually landing your first front flips. So this is actually part 2 of this little series that I'm doing. The first part, very short, very brief. If you haven't seen it yet, make sure you go check it out. I'll drop a link in the description and I will post it right here. Make sure you check that out. If you haven't yet, it briefly goes over the importance of handstands, cartwheels, and big dive rolls. If you're comfortable with those things, feel free to move forward with this one. If not, I really want you to watch that. I want you to practice and get confident and comfortable with those 3 things. Otherwise, I strongly recommend that you don't learn these flips outside. Find something like a mat, a spotter, a gym, somewhere that you can learn these in a safer environment. The first thing that we have to talk about today is break falls. A break fall is exactly what it sounds like. You're breaking your fall, right? If you start to fall, you do whatever you can to make it as comfortable as possible. There's a billion different ways to do it. I'm not going to get crazy too far into it. You can go check out other tutorials for break falls. But the general idea is don't brace yourself with your wrists and don't land on your bones. So we have some meaty spots on our leg, we got some meaty spots on our back, we got our butt, which is nice and meaty. Try to land on the meaty parts of your body, not the bony parts of your body. Rule number 1 when we're going for our first front flips is a rule I like to call the 90-degree rule. Now, I haven't heard it talked about too much, so I'll very likely do a separate video, in which case I will post a link right up here. But the general idea is that when we're learning our front flips, there's pretty much only 3 ways to bail. So the first way is landing like this. It's just gonna not feel good. You're landing smack on your butt. It's gonna jar you. It might knock the wind out of you. It's just not gonna feel good. Now this is another incorrect way to land because we are completely compressed here and a lot of different things can happen. Now the third way to bail, and in my opinion, this is the safest, this is the most comfortable in my experience. I've never had any hard, uncomfortable bails like that. And that is where our 90-degree rule comes into play. Now check out my legs. They're at a nice little 90-degree here. Now the goal is that our feet should land first, and then we drop back to our butt nice and safely. The feet take 90% of the impact, probably even more, and then we can just roll back nice and easy. So I'm gonna actually show you that in action. Notice there how my feet are hitting first, taking all of the impact, and then I just safely roll to my back. I could literally do that all day on concrete, on rocks, whatever it is. That is the safest way to bail. So that is the first rule that I want you guys to remember. 90 degrees with your legs. So we talked about the 90-degree rule, and now we're gonna expand on that. In my opinion, this truly is the most important rule, the most important safety precaution to have when learning your front flips. So now we're gonna take that idea of the 90-degree rule, and we're gonna put it into action. The way that we're gonna do this is we're gonna start with our handstands, and we're actually gonna drop over into like kind of like a half bridge, and then let ourselves fall to our backs. The entire goal here is not to make it look pretty, it's to practice getting our knees to 90 degrees, having our feet hit the ground first, and then we can drop to our back. So the first one, we're just gonna go up into a handstand, drop our knees to 90, drop over our head, and let our feet hit the ground. Up, 90, down. So I want you guys to notice there that as soon as my feet are hitting the ground, they're taking most of the impact, and then I'm just letting my back sink into the ground. feel free to do that. You can also, if you're feeling a little bit stronger, a little more up to it, you can try to keep yourself up on your arms and your feet the whole time. It's completely up to you how do you do it. You can also play with this in any different scenario that you want to try. Right here, it looks like my knees are more bent than 90 degrees, right? Now that's actually not what's happening. My legs are staying at 90 degrees until they hit the ground. Once they hit the ground, my back and my butt are scooting towards my knees, and that's what's causing them to look more bent than they actually are. Next up, we're gonna expand on this idea of going into a handstand and dropping to 90 degrees. But this time, we're not just gonna be dropping. We're actually gonna start to add a little bit of a hop with our hands so that there should be a split second where our entire body is off the ground before our feet touch the ground. This is very similar to something like a front handspring, but our goal, again, is not to land it, it's to practice the 90-degree rule and get very comfortable with having our feet hit in a safe position and then dropping down to our back or rolling back down. So notice how there's a few different ways you can actually do this. You can hop, let your feet hit, and then just drop straight to your back. You can add a little extra hop to where your feet hit and then you roll to your back. I want you guys experimenting with all of them. The first one, where I let my back just drop to the ground, that's a little bit more like a break fall. You're gonna feel some impact. That's really important to get comfortable with because in our next steps, we are gonna be taking some impact. So make sure you're comfortable with dropping your back to the ground. You can exhale a little bit, you can absorb a little bit with your back. Do whatever you need to do, but make it comfortable. So now it's time to actually start adding in our front flip. Now before we do that, it's really important for me that I reiterate the goal of this tutorial. It is not, again I repeat, not to land perfect front flips. That will be a future video. Right now, we're getting comfortable throwing front flips. Now, in order to do that, we have to talk about the different types of front flips that there are. Let's start with the takeoffs. So for takeoffs, we have punch, which a lot of people are very familiar with. Feet come together and we punch off the ground. It's a very gymnastics takeoff. It's great in parkour for things like Kong precisions because we want to Kong pre and then punch front out. Then we have what's called a split step takeoff. What I like to do is run 1, 2, and then we jump off of both feet. It's a little bit more similar to something like a plyo. We're not really going to be worried about either of those right now. The last one that we are going to be focusing on is a Webster, where we start on one foot and our other foot kicks behind us. Now the reason that I recommend starting with a Webster is because it's a lot less focused on power and it's a lot more focused on technique. And that's our goal. We want to learn controlled technique. Once we have that technique, we can add as much power as we want. And in my opinion, if you can do a Webster, the other two types of front flips are easy peasy lemon squeezy. With that said, if you're more comfortable starting with punches or split step takeoffs, feel free to do that. Everything that I'm going to go over can be applied to any one of these takeoffs. All right guys, it's finally time to start adding in these flips. Now, I am on some harder ground right now, so I'm going to get armored up. All right, now that we're all armored up, it is time to start impacting the ground. We're going to start very light, add a little more impact, add a little more impact, and then take all of the impact away. So first off, we're going to start with a dive roll. Again, you can do any type of takeoff that you want. For me, I'm going to stick with Webster's. I think it's the most controlled and it's the easiest to learn. It's going to take some time to get comfortable with it, but once you have it, you'll be able to control every aspect of the flip, where things like the punch and the split step, once you're in the air or once you've taken off, you can't really control anything as much. For the Webster, you have that back leg to kind of act as a controller for the rest of your flip. So we're going to start very, very simple, and we're just going to jump up and come down in a roll. For this first one, we are going to use our arms, and we're just going to go into a nice shoulder roll. You can also do a gymnastics roll if you want. For the next steps though, it's gonna be important that you do go over your shoulder, and you'll know why as soon as we get there. I'm gonna start pretty small. I'm gonna get bent down to the ground. The closer to the ground I am, the less painful it's gonna be if I end up slamming. Now if I jump from up here and I end up slamming, I'm dropping from about 3 or 4 feet. If I drop from right here and I end up slamming, now I'm only dropping about a foot, and it's not gonna be too uncomfortable. Start here, jump up, and we're just gonna catch and roll it out. Nice and easy, nice and comfortable. That felt really good, so I'm gonna take that a little bit higher. Instead of starting here, I'm gonna start a little bit higher up. And for the last one, I'm feeling really good. So I'm gonna actually rock from my back foot to my front foot, then jump into it and try to get quite a bit of height, catching a nice comfortable roll. Step 2 of taking our impact, we are gonna remove our hands. We're still gonna be rolling, that's your goal. I want you to actually roll out, but we're not gonna touch our hands on the ground. We are just gonna be going to the back of our shoulder this time. And this is where it gets important that we don't do somersaults, and we're actually going over our shoulder. If you try a somersault, it's probably gonna hurt your spine pretty bad. Almost no matter where you are, there's gonna be some impact. Whereas if you're landing on the back of your shoulder, it's gonna feel a lot more comfortable and a lot more natural to just roll right out of it. So I'm gonna start down low, jump up just like before. My hands might look like they're gonna guide themselves through, but they're not actually gonna touch the ground. They're just gonna miss the ground, and I'm gonna go straight to my shoulder. This time I'll get my hands out of the way completely, and I'll do kind of like a Russian set where they come behind me. Now notice here what I'm doing is I'm tensing up this back part of my shoulder, and I'm putting all the muscle there, basically flexing, so that I'm not hitting the bones on my back. I'm hitting a nice comfortable spot of muscle, and I can also tense up here, and as soon as the ground hits, I can release a little bit, and that acts similar to our legs do when we land. It bends down a little bit and absorbs some of that impact. Let's talk about our shield. Now, I like to call this part of my arm right here my shield, and I like to call this part of my arm the blade. So this is my shield, and what my shield does is it catches impact. If something's gonna impact hard, I catch it with my shield. Now my blade is only there for support. That means if any impact's gonna happen, I'm either gonna roll or catch it on my shield. If there's not a lot of impact and I'm just slowly rolling back, the blade's gonna go down for support. You might be like, what are you talking about right now? Well, it's time to show you what I'm talking about. Our next step, we are gonna take what we just did, the front flip to rolling with no arms, and now we're gonna try to add in the 90-degree rule. And your goal is gonna be to hit your feet in that 90-degree position before anything else. Now there's a few different ways we can do this. I'm gonna show you from the easiest but most impactful, which is catching on our shield, all the way to the more complex, a little bit harder. You gotta add some more power into it, but it's the safer way, and it's gonna be more comfortable to actually land. So for the first one, I'm gonna get my shield ready, get ready to catch some impact here. And I also want you to remember that what I want you to do with your eyes is to actually look at the ground. And this is kind of important. A lot of people try to pull their head away and not look at the ground. Pretend that my hand is the ground, right? If my hand comes at my face and all I'm trying to do is look at it for as long as I possibly can, my head is naturally going to move away from it. So I'm gonna watch my hand as I get closer, and in order to keep my eyes on it, I have to move my head out of the way as the ground comes past. So your goal is gonna be to keep your eyes on the ground, and that will keep your head nice and safe. It'll keep it pulled very far away. As we do that, I'm gonna be landing on my shield. I'm gonna complete the flip, and I should be about here coming down on the ground, landing on my shield with my legs in that 90-degree position. So I should be landing shield and then on my feet in that 90-degree. Notice how I'm catching here on my shield and my feet are hitting in this 90-degree rule. It does take a little bit of impact, but the more you do it, the more comfortable you're gonna be. Remember, just stay nice and low to the ground, catch on your shield, watch the ground, 90-degree rule. The more comfortable we get with this, the more power we can put in. And now what our goal is gonna be is to hit our feet first in that 90-degree position, then drop back to our shield because there will still be some impact. All that takes is a little more power from our flip. Feet are landing first, dropping back to my shield. One more time. It's completely fine if you feel your feet slipping away, as long as you feel them absorbing that impact first. Doesn't matter if they slip, if you roll back, if you slam back, whatever happens, the goal is just to get those feet down first. Time to move on to the third and probably the final step. I could add a couple little nitpicky things on here, but pretty much the last step, and that's gonna be landing in that 90-degree rule and staying on your feet. Now, that means you don't have to land like this. You can land like this, you can land like this, but notice how I'm still on my feet. They're not slipping out from under me. That is your goal. So, remember how our shield is for impact and our blade is for support? That's where this comes in handy. If your feet slip and there's gonna be a lot of impact, I want you to try to get to the shield. If they stay and it's nice and strong and they absorb 90% of the impact, go to the blade just for support. Check it out. That felt pretty good. I had a little bit of a slip, but I knew it wasn't gonna be too much impact, so I popped that blade down and I was able to stay on my feet. One more. Just using this blade to support, and I'm staying on my feet. My butt hasn't hit, I'm on my feet. Once you're confident with that, and the more you practice it, now it's time to start really adding power into your flip. You can even start tucking a little bit, as long as you remember not to tuck all the way through, but you open to that 90-degree position when you feel like the ground is coming up. Your goal now is to add that power in, get to your feet, and try not to use the blade. Try to either use a hand just to support yourself. Again, if there's gonna be impact, your hand does not go down. If you feel like you messed up, hand does not go down. We go straight to the shield, or we drop to our back. One of those two. Do not put your hand down if there's gonna be impact. This is something that's gonna take time. So feel free to stick on the drill where you're landing with your feet and then dropping to the shield, because that's gonna get you comfortable and confident and knowing where the ground is, so you'll know if there's gonna be impact or not. This time, I'm gonna try not to go for the blade, not for the shield, not for the back. I'm gonna try to land feet and stay almost on my feet, but have to drop a hand back just for a little bit of support. The feet took almost everything, and my hand literally just barely touched to hold me on my feet. Now, as we get better and better and better, that hand won't have to come down and we can go just straight to our feet. Notice how my eyes are still staying on the ground. This is purely for safety. The more confident you get and the more that you know you can land on your feet every time, instead of watching that ground with your eyes the whole time, you can now throw your head into the tuck. That's gonna add more power, and that's gonna add more rotation, so you can actually land a little bit better like this. Key things to watch here are that I am not headed for a tight tuck. I don't care how good my flip looks. I just care that I'm landing safely every time. That's all I want you focusing on. Once you can land safely 100% of the time, then you can experiment. Then you can start taking these to slightly higher ledges, little curbs into grass, so that you have that extra height and you can really focus on fast rotation and opening up and finding the ground. Because the hardest thing in landing consistent front flips is knowing exactly where the ground is and exactly when to open to put your feet down onto the ground. The only way you can learn that is tons of practice. The only way you can get in tons of practice is by making sure you can land safely every single time. Don't sleep on this stuff. It looks scary, but I promise you, just get outside, start practicing it, start rolling around, take a little bit of impact to your shoulders, to your back. Not too much at first, just take a little bit of it, get accustomed to it, and then you can start doing these. It's actually not scary at all because you're very close to the ground the whole time. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. I really hope you got something out of this. Just remember, above everything else, that safety is king. If you're landing safe, if you're confident with landing these moves safely, then you can turn them into anything that you want. And that's the key to remember. Once you're safe, you can experiment. You can start turning your front flips into front halves. You can start turning your cartwheels into back flips. You can start turning your back flips into back fulls. It's all just about being able to land safely and bail safely. Once you have that, literally any move that you want, you can teach yourself with just a little bit of creativity and a lot of time. You don't need a gym, you don't need mats, you just need to know how to bail safely. So hopefully you guys keep working on this. If you want to hear more, if you want me to go more in depth on any one of these things, if you want to hear different tutorials, make sure you drop a comment and hit that subscribe button. All right guys, I'll see you in the next one.